because
No.
I do that and then I run out of things to say in the actual show.
I'm just gonna do it, Greg. It's Saturday. We're recording on a Saturday. I know it's
exciting.
weird. It's gonna make people crazy. Guys, why are you recording on a Saturday? You normally record on a Sunday. You're recording on a Saturday. Do you guys
Yes.
realize you're recording on a Saturday? The answer to that and many more questions will be answered after the break.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yep.
Yes, we do realize that we're recording on a Saturday, and let's get to that, Jake. Now we've got something very exciting. Is that we've loaded the theme song into the stream, so I can press a button and it will appear. So we're going to do that, and then.
Well, before you do that, I do want to say we had this discussion off air, Greg, but I think it's important that the listeners know this so that they can prepare for it.
Yeah.
But Greg agreed that he would show off his. He's been learning to shuffle dance, and he agreed that while playing the intro tune, because it's such an upbeat tune, he would shuffle on air, and he's wearing these gorgeous pink shorts.
Excuse me, Jake. They're salmon.
Yeah, sorry, salmon.
Yeah.
And I don't see color, Greg. But
you're not pantsist.
No, exactly. So yeah, look, it's very exciting. I think we're prepared.
I don't want to rain on your parade, Jake. I also don't think people just want to see a shot of my crotch.
That's all right.
So I'm happy to do a little bit, but we also have to talk like traditionally we would talk over the top of the
That's
intro.
True.
Yeah,
That's true.
That puts us in a little bit of a spot. So what I'll do is I'll try and weave in a bit of a what we might call the salmon dance for the salmon pants. To rip on Chemical Brothers, so we can try and weave that in a little bit. But yeah, we've got a great show for you today, so stick around. I'm going to try and hit this play button and see what happens. Magically, it's very exciting. Hello, and welcome to The Pouch, the podcast equivalent of an urgent email from your boss at 3 p.m. on a Friday afternoon that takes a not-so-serious look at the week in Australian news and politics. I'm Greg. Well, that was a great 4 days outside, Savage.
And I'm Jake. I think you're on mute, Far Wharton. On today's episode, we talk detention costs, IR reforms, trade ministry reshuffles, and so very much more.
And Jake, while we're as snug as a bug in this proverbial rug, I want to know what your favourite phrase is from 2020.
Well, spoiler alert! I did kind of spoil the alert there. It was. I think you're on. I think you're on mute. But I do have one. I do have one other one, which is. Oh, I think she's gone. Yeah, she's gone. They're gone from the. Oh, there she is. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Continue.
She's back. Well, that's half our podcast, really, is me going, nope, Jake's dropped out. I think so. We still have some time left for the salmon pants. Ready?
Yeah. Oh, check that out.
They're good.
Yeah.
They're my non-working shorts. So, like, I don't want to wear them ever when I go outside and do any work or anything. So they're always clean. They're always ready to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, this intro goes on for a while, doesn't it?
It really does. No, it's good though. I think it's the perfect length.
It is. It's great. Well, that's the 1 minute 30 version. I've got 3 different versions. Anyway, we won't bore people with that information. You talked about your favourite phrase from 2020, Jake.
Yes, Greg, what's your favourite phrase?
Thanks for asking. Okay, so my favourite phrase. So this is the phrase I think that sums up 2020 for me.
Yep.
Is yeah, I'd totally come and visit you if it wasn't for lockdown.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's
Anyway. All right, we've got a huge show for you today. We've got a little bit of housekeeping to get out of the way at the moment. Happy 1 year anniversary, Jake! I'm so excited.
Yes, happy 1 year anniversary to you too.
Thanks. This is really exciting. There's probably only like 2 other things I've committed to in my life that have gone for over a year. So I'm pretty stoked, and just to get to this point has been fantastic. So I'm really, really excited. I know it seems a bit out of whack because we're like episode 57, but I have no idea how to number podcasts. So I just, I'm surprised they're not random numbers at this stage.
Episode 623,494.
We should do that. That'd be funny. Throw a few people off. But yeah, happy 1 year anniversary. Thank you to those people who have stuck around.
Yes.
I did, as a bit of a celebration this week, I did send off a few merch packs to 3 lucky listeners this week. I think I sent off a sticker to Western Australia for someone who signed up for our Patreon. I sent a Christmas pack off to a couple of the people, a couple of our listeners. I think it was a Kevin and a Tayuka, if I've got that right, from Tasmania, one from Tasmania, and one to Texas in America, Jake, because I don't want the borders to prevent us from sending off these merch packs. So I think I packed them up pretty nicely. I've got some. They've got personalized thank you notes. They've got a well wrapped mug. They got 2 different types of stickers whacked in there, and a Christmas box. So if you do want some merch, if you happen to be listening and you'd like me to send you just some free merch, please send me an email and play mug or sticker, which is exactly what these guys did, and they all got themselves some mugs, because I'll be honest with you, not a lot of people playing mug or sticker, so so feel free to send me an email at thepouchthepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll
you too can play.
You too can play mug or sticker. Give me a mug.
Yeah, I don't know that's going to stick as a theme tune.
Yep. Well, do you have a better one?
No.
There you go. So mug or sticker. Give me a mug.
Actually, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. I like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we received some devastating news this week, and this stupid
2020.
Stupid 2020.
Thanks, Obama.
And you finally get into a podcast. You finally, and we've been on their podcast and all that sort of stuff, and you finally get into it, and then they announce that they're leaving. It happened to me with Casey Neistat on YouTube as well. I finally got into Casey Neistat doing daily vlogs on YouTube. Looking forward to it every single day. And then like a week later, he announces that that's it. That's the end of the vlog. Luckily, he's got a significant back catalogue. But we heard some devastating news. Jake, talk me through this devastating news. There's a podcast that's ending, and I'm heartbroken. Yeah,
friends of the show, Ollie and Gareth from Coffee Over Politics, they've announced that they're going to quit. Yeah. They got 2 shows remaining, which will take them to 100 episodes. They'd always said that they'd wanted to make it to 100 episodes, and then see what happened. But they got it, or they're about to reach it, and they're content to call it a day after that.
Yeah,
what happens next?
That's politics over coffee, by the way, Jake. I got it wrong in the script. Because I always say coffee over politics, but it's politics over coffee, which makes more sense.
Yeah, it actually does. It really does. But I'm like that guy from Anchorman who he just reads what's on the script.
Exactly. So I just
whatever's on the teleprompter. I did notice that.
Yeah. Devastating news, but happy for them as well if that's what they want to do. Of course, we're stuck with a few back episodes there, but being a current affairs podcast, it's probably unless you want a history podcast now. And we will be renaming ourselves to Politics Over Coffee. So
we'll be claiming that name.
Yep.
Ferociously, violently if we need to. No.
Exactly. All right. I think that's about it for the warm-up stuff. Happy anniversary. Send me an email and you'll probably get yourself a mug. Not this mug. This mug here is one from one of my lovely students bought that for me. So thank you to those people for that one. They know I love a good mug. And the Politics Over Coffee boys are calling it quits as well. So check out their last couple of episodes, guys. Jump over there and give them some love. Give Gareth and Ollie some love. They're really great guys, and maybe we'll get them on as a reflection. Maybe we could do a what's it like to record a podcast reflection episode. That's a good idea.
Yes.
Jake, I love myself a great super group,
Me too.
Audio Slave, others.
Yep.
ABBA. Were they a super group?
Sure. I don't know. It depends on how you define supergroup.
Well, I define supergroup as what a normal person would, which is one that where all like a selection of famous people from other bands come together and form one band. So like the Traveling Wilburys.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
And all of the people that got together to sing "We Are the World."
Yes. If they were a band, yes. And this podcast is somewhat of a supergroup, Jay.
100%. Yeah. 2 superstars who existed, unto themselves until forming
until
this
we met
supergroup
backstage.
that is the Pouch. Yeah,
that's right. And this week we had a supergroup of it was so bizarre seeing a photo of all of the members of the cabinet all together, minus Mr. McGowan, of course, I believe. That was the last I heard. Is that right? Yeah. So we had
Mark McGowan decided he'd join the cabinet. What's it called? The National Cabinet.
National Cabinet, yeah.
Via teleconference, via video conference, rather.
Yeah, still out of fear of coronavirus. He's taking it very, very seriously. Good on him. So, yes, minus Mark McGowan, the Premier of Western Australia. Then we had Scott Morrison, Gladys Berejiklian, and Daniel Andrews. What a superstar he is. Anastasia Palaszczuk, whose hits include, destroying the opposition in the Queensland election. Mark McGowan, not present, of course. They're via Zoom. He's a bit like the Gorillas, I guess you could say. Gorillas, another supergroup, I think they were.
Yeah.
Stephen Marshall, who's the Premier of South Australia. Peter Goodwin, if I got that right. From Tasmania. I don't know. Were all these people here? I don't know. Andrew Barr and Michael Gunner. I did see Michael Gunner in there, that's for sure. They all flew down for the National Cabinet. There's a couple of photos of them. There's a couple of photos floating around of them hanging out together, and it was like a super group. It was like a band photo. Absolutely, very exciting.
A few people with their hands in their pockets.
I loved it.
A few people just casually standing there. A few people, doing the hands behind the back. It was really good. I quite enjoyed that socially distanced, coronavirus precautioned photo.
Absolutely. And they probably had Mr. Morrison's photographer there, who we know is extremely professional in all his dealings. So terrific to see them together as a super group. Love it. And
the photo, of course, that didn't make it, Greg, was the one that the Prime Minister suggested that be taken by the Prime Minister's photographer, which was Gladys Berejiklian and Anastasia Palaszczuk. The classic boxing shot of one arm extended towards each other. Didn't make it to air, but look, by all accounts, it was apparently a really great shot. It didn't match the tone of the National Cabinet.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. It didn't match the tone they were trying to get out to the general public, which is the metaphor, of course, being that they were fighting for the nation, but people might have thought it was they take it the wrong way, Jake.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, we also had some exciting news this week, Jake. I can't tell you how excited I am about this. Frozen the musical. They've finally cast the Frozen the musical here in Australia, and there's an Australian version coming out. Now, when I first saw this on the news, I initially got pretty excited because I thought what they were doing was making an Australian version of Frozen with like Australian, vocals and all that sort of stuff.
Aphorisms, etc.
Yeah, that's right. Sort of, just overdubbing the original Frozen, but with Australianisms to make it sort of more like, I don't know, like Bluey or something, Bluey on Ice.
Yeah.
And not anyway. And so, but then I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we actually did a Frozen version?
Yeah, if they actually did Australianise it.
Yeah, and they just called it Heated, of course, not Frozen. So I threw it to you. What are some songs that we would see on the soundtrack, Jake? So talk us through some of the songs that you think would appear on the soundtrack.
Well,
for Heated, the Australian version of Frozen. Musical.
Yeah, look, the one that jumps out, right? The one that jumps out is "Let It Burn, Let It Burn." As opposed to "Let It Snow," instead of "Do you want to build a snowman?" "Do you want to build a wind farm?"
So good. Absolutely. If they didn't cause cancer, Jake, that'd be a bonus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Didn't kill all those birds. Yeah. And in Centrelink for the first time in forever.
Which is not funny, of course. It's not funny, but it is funny.
No. And how about "Crocodiles Are Better Than People"?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yes.
I like that one.
Agree.
Yeah.
Never smile at a crocodile.
No, they are better than people.
And "I'm a Fixer-Upper." I fixed it. I'm a Fixer, featuring Christopher Pine. It's great. It's coming out of retirement to do that one with us.
It would be a nightmare to listen to Christopher Pine sing, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I've always loved the South Australian accent.
All right.
And I particularly love the way that he enunciates his vowels.
Very proper.
I don't know. I don't particularly think he's a singer, but yeah, we'll have to see. And then finally, the final one is Our Borders Aren't an Open Door, featuring pretty much all of Canberra.
Very good. Very good.
Yep.
I like that. I look forward to that one.
It's very exciting. Heated the musical.
It is very exciting. Okay. Yep. And to keep in mind, Jake, with us
On
keep
ice.
on the theme of musical. To keep on the theme, on ice has a different connotation these days, doesn't it?
That's true. That's true.
Disney on ice.
Yeah, it's in Caboolture in Queensland.
Okay. Now, speaking of the musical theme, as part of our 100-year celebration, you have a very special gift for our listeners, Jake. 100 years. As part of our 1-year celebration. You have a very special.
A little bit old today.
You have a very special musical gift coming up for our listeners, so please stick around for that one, and we'll play that about halfway through the show today. So stick around for that very special musical gift that will be bestowed upon the world. Let's get into the actual political news, Jake, and the shallow wade. Let's put on our budgie smugglers and get into this the seaweed-ridden waves of the northern beaches here in Sydney, and let's get into it. Where's my cheeky $4 million, Jake? I'm looking for my $4 million.
We all are.
Cheeky.
Well. It's because this is a really wonky one, Greg. This is the announcement, or essentially the subsequent report after an announcement that you never heard about. Nobody ever heard about this. That a cheeky $1.2 billion is being spent right now on offshore processing for 300 people, which effectively equates to roughly $4 million per person.
Yeah, right.
To systematically hold these people offshore. But yeah, look, whether you have strong feelings on how refugees are feeling, whether you have strong feelings on how refugees fleeing to Australia via boat should be treated, a report from the Senate estimates in October has given Australia a really great economic reason to rethink this current response. And the report states, as I said, that Australia will spend nearly $1.2 billion on offshore processing this financial year, just this year.
Right. Okay.
Even though fewer than 300 people remain in detention. So again, that's roughly $4 million per person. So the government has spent more than $12 billion on offshore processing in the past 8 financial years. And that's those figures are coming out of the Home Affairs Department annual reports.
Right.
So this year's budget reveals that costs will increase by more than $300 million in 2021 financial year, despite significantly declining numbers of refugees and asylum seekers, both seeking to come to Australia via boat and, of course, hopping on planes and doing it the other way. But look, it's a really interesting thing. I personally have always tried to refer to the economic argument for trying something else instead of simply, systematically and indefinitely, one might say torturing people offshore in the name of Australia. But look, the economic argument is clear that if you're spending $1.2 billion, that's I think the UNHCR, the UN, the United Nations Human Rights Council's process for refugee intake gets, I think it's around $8 billion a year.
Right.
To fund that intake process of, a building. You walk into the building as a refugee, you say, hi, I'd like to register as a refugee. And, they do the research, et cetera. And then they start, trying to put you into contact with different countries to help you to apply for that country's intake process. That's $8 billion per year, and that's donated from all countries across the world, or all countries that subscribe to the UNHCR process.
Yeah,
why don't we just invest in that and improve the intake instead of just systematically punishing these people, in other countries, in Papua New Guinea and Manus Island.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
So what's the mismatch here? Because I know that we stopped reporting the number of boats that we turn away, right? So how do we know? Is it that the people who are turned away simply aren't in Australia? They're not being processed in Australia. Like if we turn away boats, I think they go to where do they go? Is it
Manus
Indonesia?
Island?
Manus Island. But when we turn the boats away, don't they go somewhere? Like I thought we had a deal with America or something like that. Don't they get taken there?
No. So essentially, they're processed overseas. So they're processed in Papua New Guinea or Nauru.
Yes, right.
And they go through that essentially the refugee process, refugee investigation process, which is where they find out whether the claims that you make about for whatever reason you're fleeing your original or your country of origin. They investigate all of that. At the same time, they investigate, I suppose, are you potentially a radical? Are you potentially a terrorist? Are you
so is that what the money's being spent on all of this research?
Well, no, it seems that all of the money is being spent on the encampments. Essentially, the contract security organizations, exactly. And it's interesting, this dollar amount does not include the amount spent on flying sick individuals back to Australia to be treated. That you wouldn't imagine that would be cheap. But look, that does not include that 1.2 billion does not include that. Now I've got a quote from Shahar Okuvat from the Refugee Council of Australia. He says that reported spending on offshore is less than the true cost, as I said, because it doesn't include foreign aid as part of the resettlement deals. That's the US deal that you mentioned. The cost of medical care and detention for people evacuated to Australia, and the significant legal costs and settlement paid to detainees for their ill treatment, which is something that I think a lot of people would like to know what we are paying, essentially what we are settling on paying refugees who try to come to Australia, who are taken offshore, processed for an indefinite amount of time, live in squalor, by all accounts, live in complete isolation, with really no way of getting out of that. So it really plays on many of their minds, and as a consequence, greatly affects their mental health. And it seems completely reasonable that they would sue the Australian government for their treatment when they actually do find settlement somewhere else. And very much like to know so that we can add that to the overall dollars. Because there is, I think, a very strong case to be made for a better process here, an economic argument for investing in a better process, that shouldn't involve the ill treatment, the systematic ill treatment of individuals offshore.
No, that's exactly right. I think, I don't know what the counter argument to that might be. The only thing that I can think is that obviously the government is pushing the idea that their Stop the Boats campaign has worked, right? That the idea that if you come to Australia via boat, you're not going to get in, so don't even bother. And that philosophy and that policy, saves lives. So can you put a dollar value on the fact that that policy actually saves lives? What dollar value do you put on that if the process is working to stop the boats from coming over? But I don't know. But at the same time, if you're here, there needs to be a very, very strict, guidelines around how you treat individuals. We need to be following those guidelines for how you treat refugees and how you treat individuals who have tried to seek asylum in your country.
Very valid arguments, because as you say, the Stop the Boats policy, it worked. They don't. While the government isn't reporting on the number of boats that come to Australia with refugees, so we don't really know the number of boats that are coming. By all accounts, that has diminished significantly, and invariably you would see an increase in the number of people being treated in these offshore detention facilities if there were more boats coming. So that's one thing. But I suppose the argument is, this is a lot of money over a lot of time. Let's rethink this. We can do more than one thing. We can set up these offshore detention camps at the same time. Reduce the expenditure on those at the same time as increasing the expenditure on things like the established UNHCR process for refugee intake. That invariably would be less overall. It would be significantly less. Anyway, there's all sorts of there's all sorts of nuance here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting news, Jake. If you have an opinion about that, please either leave a comment below and we can talk about that while we're live, or send us an email at thepouchpodcast@gmail.com and we will read your comments out live on air. Never again, Jake. A parliamentary inquiry report. This is about Rio Tinto and the destruction of the Juukan. Is that right? Is that how I say it?
Yeah, Juukan Gorge. Juukan Gorge. I've heard it pronounced both.
Is inexcusable. I was listening to this week, and I was surprised to find that they actually received. I think my understanding is that they received approval to actually destroy these caves, and that's what this process is about. Talk me through it, Jake. Tell me what's happening. Tell our listeners what's happening with this, because I think we're all a bit sick of the idea that we're just going around destroying landmarks that are tens of
sacred
thousands of years
sites.
old. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Look, so this is all because an interim report has been provided thanks to a parliamentary inquiry into the Rio Tinto's role in the destruction of the Juukan Gorge caves. And the report's titled Never Again, an inquiry into the destruction of the 46-year-old caves at the Juukan Gorge in Pilbara region of Western Australia. Interim report. So the inquiry has made a series of recommendations, and chief among them is that the mining giant must compensate traditional owners for the loss of the sacred site and commit to reconstructing it, which is really quite interesting. The main reconstruction effort, I believe, is A, the shelters, and B, there's a water course that runs either through or adjacent to the caves that the report suggests that they should focus on. So the inquiry was established to really investigate everything from Rio Tinto's corporate behaviour, the adequacy of state and Commonwealth heritage laws, and invariably the harm and anguish caused to the traditional owners. Ultimately, as you said, Greg, and as the committee suggested, the destruction was legal and it was approved, it was sanctioned, but it was devastating to the traditional owners.
Well, that's right. See, I was sort of under the impression when the news first broke that it was kind of like an ask for forgiveness, not permission sort of situation. But they had actually asked for permission. And we sort of saw this in Victoria with the fiddleback as well, in the sense that, when the
trees adjacent to the highway that was being built.
That's right. So it was cut down, and they had actually sought approval from the Eastern Maar Aboriginal Corporation, and they'd sought approval. They've got that approval to cut down that tree, and then it's not until after the fact that people sort of once it makes the news that people start to go, oh, that's not such a great idea. But people had actually been fighting for that. So there is an actual process for this to happen, and a lot of these companies and organizations are actually following those processes. So it's one of those challenges where who's actually giving that approval, and they're also not getting the support from the backers that they would probably like to get as well, their constituency as well, the people that they're purporting to represent. So it's a challenging one, isn't it?
It really is, and I'll quote directly from the report where they say, quote, the traditional owners faced a perfect storm with no support or protection from anywhere. Quote, they were let down by Rio Tinto, the Western Australian government, the Australian government, their own lawyers, and native title law. So among the findings, recommendations, it was suggested that Rio Tinto work with traditional owners to reconstruct the ancient structure, as I said, especially that adjoining water system. It also called for a moratorium of all mining in the area, as well as recommending that the company review its internal procedures in managing Indigenous heritage matters, which seems like a no-brainer, frankly. But the inquiry is investigating the adequacy of state and Commonwealth heritage protection laws, and suggested that there is a lot that needs to be done there. Quoting again from the report, quote, the Western Australian legislation that enabled the destruction of the Juukan Gorge is woefully out of date and poorly administered. Everyone accepts that. So yeah, it's pretty full on, and I would say there's been a bunch of reports this week from a number of very high profile economists suggesting that if companies like Rio Tinto don't get their stuff in order, that they don't fix what they have done, A, and B, ensure that it never happens again, then invariably they are going to face an exit from significant shareholders who simply do not want to be associated with a company that destroys native heritage.
Yeah, and that's on top of obviously the destruction of those natural, of those what do you call it? Significant sites as well. We don't want that to be happening. It is a shame that the processes aren't really conducive to, to long life. I mean, we know we've got so many stories about mines that are just left, that have left the areas in disgrace, that they just basically pack up and leave, and the whole area is just completely destroyed. And part of their contracts when they start those mines is that they're going to clean it up, and they just don't do that, and then there's no real consequence. I mean, if there is a consequence, what is it? A financial consequence? They can afford it.
No, exactly. Well, the normal provisions are that you are not meant to leave the land worse off than the way that you found it at the beginning. Yeah. I mean, invariably, quite often the mines just move on to the next one, but they should be. They are required to factor in the cost of regenerating the land that they've had that mine on.
That's right. It'd be good if it was a zero-sum game in total. That would be a bonus for everybody. But the BBC does say that the mining giant Rio Tinto must rebuild the 46,000-year-old Aboriginal cave system it blew up in May, and it said that's what the inquiry said. Anyway, I wonder how they go about rebuilding the cave. That doesn't sound like an easy job.
I don't think you can rebuild a cave, but it's possible that the shelters that were found within them, they can move some boulders. Or I don't know. I don't know what it would involve. But I think the main thing was ensuring that the shelters are there, because they are areas that the elders would return to and teach the stories of the land, etc. And it was quite important that the water course be rejuvenated as well.
Okay. All right. Now, Jake, we're up to story 2. Do we want to?
Let's do an interlude celebrate and give the present for the listeners.
Let's do that. Now, this is my first time navigating the fun that is the program that we use for live streaming. So what I've got to attempt to do here is I've got to attempt to take off our camera and put up the song. Now, Jake, do you want to talk us through a little bit about the song, or do we just want to launch into the gift for our listeners?
I'm happy to talk through it while you're setting up the screen.
Sure.
Yeah,
sounds good.
So I wanted to, and Greg and I were just sort of discussing. Do you want to do something fun? Do you want to do something interesting for the end of year, for the 1 year anniversary? And we were sort of spitballing backwards and forwards. And, one of us suggested maybe we do like a recap song, like a song that recaps the year. So I listened to a few songs that I thought might be really cool and have a vocal hook, particularly in the chorus, that might be able to summarize that it was a big year. And I think I found one, Greg.
Yeah, it sounds really good. I'm really stoked with it. This is 100% Jake, ladies and gentlemen. I can take a little bit of credit for maybe the video side of things, but we'll launch into it. Okay, so I have to go to the new blank scene and then do that. So you're going to get a glimpse behind the scenes, ladies and gentlemen, for 1 second here.
Here comes the salmon shorts.
Here we go. Here we go. And I've got to click on the thing. That's right. I've read that a million times.
Hey Jake, Greg here. We've been producing the Pouch the Podcast about Australian news and politics, well, not so seriously, for a whole year now. So to save our busy listeners from trawling through our entire back catalogue, do you reckon you could summarise this year's events in a couple of minutes or less? I'm sure it wouldn't be that difficult. It's for our newer listeners and our old ones, and, well, really it's just for me actually, because listening to your voice once a week, it simply isn't enough. I need more.
That's great, it starts with a bush fire, water bombs on aeroplanes, Morrison's on holidays. He's coercing, forcing handshakes. He observes his own needs, took a hit for these deeds. Now is not the time to talk climate change. He yells he's a real bitter with fear of burning everything. Volunteers are volunteers, they don't need sticking money. And the government responds, sending 80 effing strong. Ranking boring down after months and months of none. Then a sports grant roared. The PM's team reporters baffled emails, spreadsheets, emails, look at ministerial standards. Fine, then. McKenzie goes. Barnaby fractions gnats. McCormick will do. Barnaby, get behind. He always serves his own needs. He doesn't earn enough money. Economy's not great, but we're gonna be in black. Angus Taylor, Global More, close the gap. Short sight. Pepper Bubble's pretty psyched. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. I feel fine. Early morning TV news. Wuhan, China, onion virus. Get back home real quick. Border's gonna shut down. Lock it all down. Cases rising. Work in school remotely. Gotta save economy. Gotta pause economy. Job, keep a job. Seek a job. Make a job. Creeper. Get the website. Stuart Robert. Cases rise, cases fall, toilet paper's flying off the wall. Cases falling, we're clear, they're clear. Oh, Victoria, lock it down. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. I feel fine. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. I feel fine. And I really miss everybody. The origins of COVID drive a continental drift divide. Backbenchers all sit in line, finger pointing China. China hates us. Retribution starts now. Goodbye barley, goodbye beef, lobster, wine, boom. The symbiotic peaceful trading is a gun, right? Gosh, I hope not. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. I feel fine. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. I feel fine. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. It's the end of the year as we know it. I suppose I feel fine. Yeah, I've already turned it off and on again. I'm only getting 2 megabits per second. How am I supposed to work from home on that?
Okay, very good, Jake. Very good. Let me see if I can bring this back up here. There we go. There we go. That was very good. Let me put in a little applause there. I couldn't find the applause button. Yay!
That was
Very
great.
good.
I love the commentary in the subtitles. Fantastic.
Yeah. A few little, what do they call it? Easter eggs in there.
Yeah, I love it. So
Mainly
much.
just for me, keep me sane while I'm editing all those the vocal parts.
Well, the subtitles, as you rightly identified very early on, Greg, are kind of necessary because it's so fast. It's such a fast song.
I couldn't believe it. When you first presented that to me, I was so blown away that you actually pulled it off, that you sat down and you pulled out every single one of those lyrics. I've seen REM do that song unplugged on YouTube, and he has to have the lyrics out. So he says, I got to get the lyrics out. I got to forget them. That's how many words there are in those songs.
Yeah.
And I think even just the way that you managed to incorporate all of those little uh-ohs, and it must have taken you ages, but anyway, very well done. I'm very, very proud of it. So we'll make sure that there's a link there in YouTube, and we'll get that out there. Please share it with your friends, families, foes, whoever you want to do that with. Yeah, thanks so much for doing that, Jake. It's
such
really
a pleasure.
Good. Now and thank you to Ecamm Live, which managed to actually, I don't even know how it did that, but it did that.
Yeah,
it even automatically started playing. Yeah, it was fantastic. Now, Jake, a few weeks ago we spoke about the fact that Anthony Albanese is struggling to tow the country along with him in his journey for a utopian state here in Australia, but he hasn't done himself any favors this week. Sorry, ScoMo did him a little bit of a favor this week, and threw him a cause. Tell us what's happening between ScoMo and Elbow.
Well, you might have heard that the government this week, in their final sitting week of Parliament, had brought the what's called a sprawling omnibus IR bill.
I did not hear about the omnibus, Jake. What I heard about this week from Parliament, which I had in my notes, which are different to your notes, but my notes are about China, the economy, and jobs. That's what I had. So tell me what's happening with the omnibus.
This is about the those final two. So it
is
doesn't
this the bus
necessarily
that Scott Morrison was talking about when he said, not everyone's got to be on the bus for the bus to leave the station? Yeah.
No, an omnibus is a term essentially that means a whole bunch of stuff. So an omnibus is, you've got a whole bunch of little things that are snipped together, and you refer to an omnibus bill when you've got a whole bunch of little laws that make up a bigger IR reform or a bigger reform type bill.
Okay.
So Christian Porter, as the Industrial Relations Minister, had introduced this sprawling omnibus IR bill Industrial Relations bill into Parliament this week, and it contained
is this the one about casuals? Is this the one?
Yes,
yeah.
It has some provisions around changes to wage theft laws, specifically that anybody who participates in wage theft knowingly, because essentially the government is putting up a whole bunch of provisions to help employers to ensure that they are paying the correct rate to their employees.
Right. So I'm just going to jot that down. So don't commit wage
fraud.
Theft. Okay. All right.
No,
wage theft. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Okay. I'm glad we established that. Yeah.
It does. It makes a lot of sense.
That's
yes, because it's about to. So essentially, they're criminalizing it, which is.
Oh right. Okay. So now wage theft will be a criminal offence, will it?
It will.
It wasn't before. Okay. Great.
It wasn't. No. And that's such a strange thing, isn't it? Because theft is.
Well, I might have to start doing this podcast on my own, Jake, if I'm not allowed to do wage theft anymore, because I don't know. I don't know how much you're making.
I'm a volunteer. But yes, it also includes the classification of casual workers to ensure that they have a pathway to become permanent when they are working the same regular hours. And we discussed that on last week's shows.
Yeah. And these are the largest reforms since the last reforms, aren't they, about the contract agreements and things? Is that right?
So
am I half on the right track?
You're 1,000% right. So can
we go a million?
You could. You could
see
try.
if I can make $1 million. By the end of the show. Okay.
Let's really try hard. So look, it's really quite interesting, Greg, because the Liberal National Party has been highly reticent towards bringing anything into Parliament that even touched industrial relations reform, or laws because of the impact. You know, they are bruised and scarred. They have the world on their shoulders because of, you know, the Howard government era legislation, which was, you know, essentially broadly referred to as work choices. You know, that essentially saw a complete ousting of the Howard government and of the Howard ministry when Kevin Rudd swept to power in 2007. Kevin 07, you may recall.
I do. I had the shirt.
And that was you know, mostly on a platform of getting rid of these of the industrial relations reforms that were put in place as part of that work choices law change. So they have been extraordinarily reluctant to doing anything on industrial relations. But you know, as we said last week, the Prime Minister at the very beginning of these discussions, and he essentially the Prime Minister brought together, as you know, we've discussed this many times before. You know, when you've got a crisis, you bring the smartest people together, you put them in a room, you let all of those smartest people in different rooms. You bring them together in one room, and you get them to address an issue.
They call it the smart room.
The smart room. That's right. It's got a smart board in it and some smart speakers. It's very smart.
It's all smart. Yeah, everything's smart.
And so essentially they did that, and there was roughly 150 hours of consultation and negotiations that occurred as part of this.
Okay.
One thing that did not occur in these in those discussions, one thing that was not addressed during that discussion was the temporary removal of what's called the boot test, or the better off overall test, which essentially the better off overall test is one of those things in arbitration. So if your employer says, Greg, I need to pay you less, but I need you to work the same amount of hours.
Yes, they say that a lot.
That will be for exactly that'll be for exactly 3 months, and after that 3 months, I'll be able to give you a permanent position at your normal rate. And that means, you know, in that very hypothetical situation, the employee in that case, Greg, is better off overall. What this is about is essentially saying, hey, we've got a temporary crisis at the moment called COVID, and what it might require is that essentially employers and employees would need to agree together to do something like, you know, quite often it'll be a pay cut, it'll be a conditions cut, you know, you'll need to work more hours for less money, that sort of thing. And as long as the employer, the employee agree, then the Fair Work Commission would be willing to, you know, in specific cases, it would have to be, you know, directly related to COVID, et cetera. The Fair Work Commission would be, I suppose, open to you know, disregarding the better off overall test associated with
temporarily,
that
because
2 years.
The payoff
that's all we
would
get.
Be, right. Okay. I hate, if I've got this right, then I hate any sort of clause which allows these negotiations to sort of take place. I don't get it, because, you know, employees by sort of their nature often feel so intimidated by their bosses. And if their boss comes to them, especially in uncertain times, and says, look, you know, we're going to change this, and this about your conditions. Are you down with that? Do you want to, you know, is there anything you want to do? They just go, yes, sir, no, sir, you know, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, you know, whatever you want. And then they go home and feel miserable about it, because they don't, you know, who has those sorts of negotiation skills? If someone's in a position of power, then they obviously work their way up, and they obviously have some sort of skills in terms of negotiation. But what about the person below them? And that, you know, they just want to do their job, and they want to get paid well, and they you know. Anyway.
And you're so right, but I suppose the counterpoint to that,
$1,000,000%
Greg,
right, Jake? Have I made the million? Yes.
You got to the million.
Where's my applause button? Hang on. Apparently I can set a shortcut, a keyboard shortcut.
Fantastic. We got there. I suppose the count, it was worth the payoff. Yeah, it definitely was. I suppose the counterpoint to that, Greg, is that in that specific situation where, you know, the clause is enacted, you know, the employer says, hey, I need you to do this, I need you to take a pay cut or conditions cut. You know, it would only be done in order for the business to survive. So the other option is, well, you either take the pay cut or the conditions cut, or the business doesn't survive, therefore you don't have a job. Right. So, you know, look, in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense for a Liberal government to, you know, to be enacting these types of laws, because, you know, There have been plenty of announcements in the past by plenty of current and former ministers saying something in the order of, if you're not happy with the amount of money that you're making and your boss isn't able to give you a raise, go and get a different career or go find a different job. So that I suppose is always open, but it's not, it's not necessarily fair or reasonable.
No, that's right. And you're right.
I was just going to say, look, the very fact that this has been sprung, it's been sprung on the Australian people as much as...
I'm feeling very sprung.
Feeling triggered.
I feel sprung upon.
1,000,000%, would you say?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So the very fact that this has been sneaky, it's been sneaky. It was not discussed in the, in those 150 hours of consultation and negotiations.
Yeah.
And must have occurred, according to Sally McManus, the Secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions. She said that this must have occurred in lobbying subsequent to those negotiations, and essentially is something that the Business Council, the business people might have wanted. But we're not willing to discuss with the unions and the other working the employee side, the arbiters, exactly. Yes. So very, very interesting. And in my opinion, this is where Anthony Albanese is very, very comfortable.
He's got a slam dunk.
Discussing unfair industrial relations laws, or unfair by I suppose the pub test. It's one of those things, and you were very right to point out that argument of
the 1,000,000% right we established.
Well, the 1,000,000% argument where essentially the employee, there's a power imbalance between employee and employer, and quite often the employee will just say, okay, well, I suppose.
Yeah, the idea of taking advantage of it. Well, I did listen to that this week, and I like the boot test, the better off overall test, in the sense that they said, how are employees meant to adjust their workforces according to all of these new rules? And they said, well, it's quite easy in the sense that you just need to ask yourself if the employee is better off. If the employee is better off, then you've got really nothing to worry about. If they're worse off, then you've got something to worry about. So, that's sort of your guiding light through all of this. So hopefully that does work out, and hopefully no one takes too much advantage of that. No one takes advantage of all of that 2-year grace period.
Well, ultimately, Christian Porter has said that the government would look as to whether that particular law change would actually remain in the omnibus bill, which has gone off now for Senate interrogation and special committee interrogation. So either way, Labor's got a foot in the door now.
Yeah,
Albanese, who is very comfortable in discussing workers' rights, that this is where he came from. This is his forging grounds. He is very comfortable in fighting the government on industrial relations reforms that are, according to the pub test, the everyday Australian test, are, probably not so appropriate, not so great.
Yeah, and that'll link in well with the coronavirus stuff, because obviously Scott Morrison has got a bit of a slam dunk there with his handling of the coronavirus. But the fact is that now we're in a COVID normal world. How do we get jobs back, and how do we make sure that employees are looked after both now and into the future when another pandemic hits? Speaking of looking after Australians, Jack, I do love these off the cuff segments where I just randomly spring a news story on you. I just wanted to talk, really wanted to briefly talk about this cashlet debit card situation. Writing for the Guardian, Luke Henriques Gomez and Katrina and Catherine Murphy, wrote that the Morrison government's cashless debit card has been extended for a further 2 years after a plan to make it permanent was dealt a major blow in the Senate. The coalition's bill appeared likely to be voted down late on Wednesday after the swing vote Senator Rex Patrick,
the Centre Alliance,
revealed he would not support plans to make the existing trials at 4 sites in Western Australia, South Australia and Queensland permanent. But the Social Service Minister Anne Ruston introduced last-minute amendments leading to the Centre Alliance Senator Sterling Griff abstaining from the vote. So that's pretty interesting to me, the idea that this didn't really do what it wanted to do. Did you read about this? Do you have any sort of views as to why it didn't work?
Look, I think there was a consistent amount of lobbying from the community and community groups on behalf of those who were put on the trial. That essentially the people having these cashless debit cards where they receive their welfare amounts are dehumanizing.
Yes. Yeah.
They're essentially saying, we don't trust you to take the cash that you would normally get. So you're only allowed to spend this money in grocery stores buying staples that we agree on. Yeah. Okay. You're not allowed to go to the public bar. You're not allowed to go to the pub. You're not allowed to go to the cafes, and you're not allowed to go
be used for alcohol or gambling products. Yeah.
And various other things, but essentially, it is putting a leash on the public, and very few people are so comfortable with that. Look, I think there was a consistent amount of lobbying from the community and community groups around the disenfranchisement and dehumanization associated with the program. Again, it sort of comes back to that whole premise of the Liberal National Party have within their ethos, and I'm not necessarily saying this is bad. I'm just saying this is the way it is. Yeah. That they've always got this opinion that, look, if you're not happy with your situation, then improve it. Go out and get a job. Is there any reason why you're on welfare? Why can't you get off welfare? Just get off welfare.
So it does say here, in opposing the bill, Senator Patrick argued that the government had provided anecdotes rather than evidence in its bid to prove the scheme had achieved positive results. In the end, when weighing up all of the evidence, the difficulty for me is the government has not made out its case, he said. Senator Patrick travelled to the trial site in Seduna, is it? And the Northern Territory while deliberating whether to support the legislation. When I try to balance up everything that I've seen, unfortunately, the data is not there that supports the concept that the card achieves what it is intended to achieve. And he said governments should create opportunities and provide services to support people. It's not their role to hold people back and create further disadvantage, which is what the welfare card does.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself, although I tried.
Well, yeah, he did say it. He did say it. He did say it quite eloquently, did he? It's like it's his job or something like that. Yeah.
So it's like he had time to write a speech.
Okay, so the Nationals, Jake, are pushing to reclaim the trade portfolio from the Liberals. This is exciting.
And it makes a bit of sense. It does make a little bit of sense.
Is that because of the rural situation?
That is one of the reasons cited.
Damn it.
Yeah, absolutely.
10% correct. Okay.
Well, it's actually probably about 90 to 95% correct.
Yeah, okay.
Or 995,000 to 940, anyway.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Correct.
Yeah.
But essentially, what has happened here is, quite often, if things are, if there has been a bit of a shake-up throughout the year in federal politics, quite often the Prime Minister will reshuffle the cabinet, or premiers might reshuffle the cabinet in order to realign ministers with portfolios that meet their experience, and where they've done really well in the past, or etc. Fit with their academic pathway that they went through, their degrees, etc. You know what I'm trying to say, Greg?
Read the script, Jake.
You know what I'm trying to say, listeners. Anyway. Really quite interesting here. There was a reshuffle. There was always going to be a reshuffle, thanks to the farewelling of Senator Matthias Cormann earlier in the year. So there was always going to be a change to a number of portfolios. Among that was always going to likely be the trade portfolio. So the Nationals are now pushing to reclaim the trade portfolio from the Liberals in Scott Morrison's looming cabinet reshuffle, arguing essentially that they are closer to the Australian farmers who have been hardest hit by the increasing tensions with China and other issues as well. So, yes, the Deputy Leader of the Nationals, David Littleproud, confirmed the internal push during an interview earlier this week, while also ruling out financial assistance for Australian businesses that have lost money in the widening dispute with Beijing, because of course that would you've totally tripped me up. That would constitute a certain amount of what do you call it? Any sort of government funding would increase the likelihood that China would have a case on things like, so governments are not supposed to prop up agriculture that is sold
that's the whole point
trade.
of a trade agreement. Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Because essentially, what that means is the government is subsidising the development of a product. Therefore, they are influencing the international trade price that ends up the product being sold for. So, yes, Littleproud said that there was mounting evidence that the Chinese government's actions against export sectors and wine were motivated by more than technical reasons, and called on Beijing to clarify its reasons, quote, not just for the comfort of the Australian government, but for all trading partners. And Morrison is preparing for a pre-Christmas reshuffle that will include appointing new trade minister because Simon Birmingham has now been moved into the finance portfolio to backfill Matthias Cormann, who has left.
Oh, yep. Yes, he's jet-setting around the world. Yes.
He is indeed. Littleproud, the agriculture minister, said that food producers were, quote, invariably in National Party seats. Quote, I think it fits more comfortably with the National Party because the people we represent rely on it more than any other industry. How about that?
Okay, I do agree because, in the sense that I think we're just so disconnected here, like being a school teacher, I know the conversations that I have to have with students about where their food comes from, and they're just blown away about the farms, and they're blown away about, crops and how far it has to travel and what you have to do to get stuff to a supermarket, because to them food just appears. So, I can imagine that disconnect permeating, through Parliament or whatever, it just in the sense that, there's such a difference between living on the land and living in the city, and I think that if those people can be better represented, then that's good.
I think better representation sounds great. What I disagree with is that is going to come from the Nationals.
Yeah, right.
I mean, essentially.
Barnaby does a good choice. I mean, a good job. He's made sure that he doesn't. He's tried to bridge the gap, hasn't he, between the city and the country? He's in the country. And he uses Twitter. Yeah,
that's right. 140 characters or less, which is probably too many. But for him,
when he's filming a video.
Yeah, that's right. I would not necessarily, strategically speaking, I'm not necessarily certain that any of the Nationals front bench, any of the Nationals, cabinet would be useful in a highly sensitive diplomatic situation.
Yeah.
For example, there is absolutely no bloody way that I would give it to Barnaby Joyce, who in the past has been, not so favorable towards China. There's plenty of things that China could lean on in order to... Anyway, I personally think that, yes, you do need to consider who goes into this. I'm not certain that better representation of the farmer's position in that is going to assist when you're dealing with a massive country like China, who potentially could give or take, our offerings.
Yep, that's exactly right. And yep, they're China's flexing their muscles, and maybe this is the Nationals' way of trying to flex their own muscles in their direction as well. Who knows? What's real and what's not? I know something that's real, Jake. I know that this was our 1 year anniversary, and I feel privileged to have spent that time with you. A couple of notes that I made during the show. We've only ever done this show remotely. You and I have never sat in the same room and done this show. You're in Queensland.
That's
I'm
right.
in New South Wales. So I think the fact that we've managed to pull off a 1 year of podcasting remotely at what I like to think is half decent quality.
No, it's pretty good. It's pretty good quality.
Yeah, pretty good. And now I need to ask you a question that might put you on the spot a little bit. A lot of podcasts at the moment are wrapping up their seasons for the year. Last year, you and I plowed through the Christmas break. We still every week we still got together and recorded a podcast. Are you still willing to do that throughout this Christmas break, Jake?
Oh, I got a number for you, Greg. 1,000,000% yes.
1,000,000% yes. Yay. Oh, look, I've got a shortcut now. Oh, it didn't work. I knew it wouldn't work. I had it right there. I'll try again. Yeah. Look at that. Okay. That's amazing. I got a keyboard shortcut for the applause. That's fantastic. Excellent. Well, we will keep doing the show. So we'll keep doing the show. Now, just to clarify a couple of things, we used to try and do the show on a Sunday. We wanted to get our weekends back, so then we started doing it Monday nights. Monday nights are a bit tricky over the next couple of Mondays, so we have to work around our weekends. So that's why we're recording today on a Saturday. Usually, when we get back into a rhythm, it'll be about that Monday night. So you can guarantee sometime between Sunday and Monday, you'll get your show. So thank you so much for sticking around for the years. Thank you so much to our Patreon subscribers, especially. Yes. The fact that you guys do that is amazing. If you'd like to do that, you can check out patreon.com/thepouchthepodcast. But Jake, when our listeners have finished ogling the photo opportunities that the supergroup of the National Cabaret presented, what would you like them to do?
Love them to rate, review, and subscribe. Rating and reviewing means that other people who might be looking for podcasts get to see ours. So
Absolutely.
Please do it. We'd love it. Become a patron. That'd be great. But otherwise, if you're not ready for that intimacy, rate and review. That'd be great.
That's right. Now, Jake, I forgot that I can actually play the theme song. That's nice. And if you want to share the love, you can do so by telling your friends, families, and foes to head to thepouchthepodcast.com, where they can choose or select or peruse their favorite podcast player of choice and subscribe that way. It's funky now. Oh, yeah. It's a nice bass line, isn't it?
It is a great bass line.
It's a nice one. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's
Did you do that on MIDI?
From GarageBand.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. Hoping it's not copyright infringement.
No.
Dear, speaking of copyright infringement,
Hey!
it's your song, Jake. I'm going to let it play out. Jake, thank you so much for podcasting with me for the year. I'll get this out as soon as I can, and we'll upload that on YouTube. I'm going to leave this song go again one more time, Jake, so thank you so much.
Do you reckon you could summarize this?
And we're going to have to sit around like geese and listen to it for the whole thing, because I forgot to do the video.
Our old ones, and, well, really, it's just for me, actually, because listening to your voice once a week, it simply isn't enough.
I'm going to pause
really
it. All right. I'm going to go. All right. Thank you so much, Jake. And I will chat to you again during the week.
Thank you, Greg.
Happy
1 year.
Happy 1 year. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off then.
That's all right.
Like a jerk.
Yeah. Look, if you cutting me off makes you a jerk, I don't want to know what that makes me. It makes me a clown horn. Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, for sticking around. Patreon.com/thepouchthepodcast. We'll see you all very, very soon. Bye.